Well, now he is. Former FBI Assistant Director James Kallstrom on what took so long. What do you think, Jim?
Hi, Neil. I think it came at the right time, and I think it was done correctly, and I'm glad it happened for the morale of the FBI and for the rule of law and for a whole host of other reasons, Neil.
You know, you're always worried when you hear these, especially the letter that the president wrote, the reference to the 3 times the president himself was exonerated. I'm paraphrasing here. How would he know that? Would the director have told him that the investigation on Russian ties didn't apply directly to him? It raises more questions than it answers, doesn't it?
Well, I guess to the uninformed, yes. You know, remember, Neil, about a few months ago back when there was a news story in the Times and other major outlets that this guy McCabe, the deputy director, told Royce Previs that when he was over there at a meeting at the White House that there was nothing, it was all BS, basically, this whole Russian thing. And, you know, I don't know that that's for a fact, but I never saw it called back in any of the media, so I assume it probably happened. So
Okay.
it is a bit of a mystery, but
I guess the question I ask you now, we talked about how this delays other priorities. That might very well be the agenda on the part of those who want to pounce on this, use it as a distraction to keep the president from getting what he wants on his legislative agenda, including the health care thing, tax cuts, regulatory relief, all of that. But how long do you expect this to drag on? Normally when an FBI director goes or there's a controversy with the president firing him, you'd have to go back to 1993 with Bill Clinton to see something like that. It doesn't go away anytime soon. It becomes a preoccupation in Washington.
Before I answer that, it would really be a shame if the Republicans don't have enough votes for to get this this program passed. I mean, can't they do more than 2 or 3 things at once? It's really disgraceful in my view. But nevertheless, if I could just take a minute.
Sure.
Jim Comey at the very beginning, made the huge mistake of dancing with the devil. A criminal referral came over to the FBI, apparently attached to it a note from the Attorney General not to call it a criminal investigation. And then, as we learned later on, a grand jury was never empowered. You cannot conduct a major investigation without a grand jury because you can't compel testimony, you can't serve search warrants, et cetera, Neil. But months later, he has this press conference, which was unprecedented, and he talks about this investigation, which, even though it was hollow, in my view, there was enough evidence scattered around Hillary Clinton and her tribe there that, that he put together a pretty effective prosecution memo. By the way, something no one in the FBI ever does unless it's in conjunction with an indictment. And then he goes on to say that he's not going to recommend an indictment and the more or less the Attorney General was going to go along. I think she made a statement she'd go along with whatever he said, which is unprecedented. The FBI director does not make those decisions. And then he puts one last capper. He says that there was no intent because the statute doesn't require it in espionage. But this claim that Hillary Clinton, kind of didn't know what was going on and didn't have enough brain power to understand she had to protect classified material, which is just preposterous that someone that's been in the White House for 8 years and traveled on Air Force One a million times and understands how NSA
you talk, James, to friends and contacts and source of your own at the FBI. What's the mood there like? Now, a lot of them liked Comey. A lot of them felt, as you mentioned there, that he went too far. But what are they thinking?
Well, Neil, I can only tell you what I know, and I don't. Of course, there's no scientific balance at the FBI, but my impression is, and I've been contacted by literally hundreds and hundreds of retired agents, and I see a lot of the active duty agents. I've never talked to anybody that was intimately involved in the investigation. I never would, even if I could, I never would. But I've talked to numerous agents at retirement dinners and different things, we go to from time to time, and they were very, very disappointed because of the reasons I just told you, that the FBI does not do those types of things that Comey did. I think he's a principled guy. I don't think it was for political reasons, but he just had a blind spot as to his ego and common sense. Have you ever known people that are highly educated that don't have 100% common sense, Neil?
Story of my life, pal. All right, James Kallstrom, always good seeing you or hearing you. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, my pleasure, Neil. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now, who is going to replace James Comey? A couple of very prominent political names have popped up. That could cause a problem. And a lot of people are comparing this to a sort of a Nixonian moment. For those of you of a certain age, the Saturday Night Massacre, would that ring a bell? Well, we'll go back in time with Ben Stein, who will do a far better job bringing back the spirit and prestige of the FBI. So who would that person be? Charlie Gasparino has been talking to a lot of folks and has assembled a bit of a short list for us. What do you got, Charlie?
And talking to mainly people at the FBI, and what they're telling me, a couple things, Neil. Most of them that I talked to were pretty shocked, devastated by the news. They didn't see it coming, even though we at Fox Business and Fox News did as of last week. As you know, we first reported that, I did, that he was kind of on thin ice over there. But they are shocked, and be that as it may, they are, inside the FBI, there is a short list that's being assembled, and it includes people like Chris Christie, New Jersey governor, former prosecutor himself from New Jersey, the District of Newark, Rudy Giuliani, both the mayor of New York City, big Trump supporter, and a former U.S. attorney for the Southern District, major crime fighter during the 1980s on Wall Street corruption and New York City corruption. Trey Gowdy, the congressman from South Carolina, also, from what I understand, a former prosecutor, and Ray Kelly, who might be the best bipartisan choice if you talk to people. Ray Kelly is, I guess, nominally a Republican. I don't know what party he is, but he served as police commissioner under David Dinkins, who was a Democrat, served as police commissioner under Michael Bloomberg, both mayors of New York City, Mike Bloomberg was both a Republican and an independent. So those are the names, I guess the headline names on the short list. Obviously, it could be someone that we're not even talking about here, but those are the headline names, and those are the names that are bouncing around the FBI right now, and also bouncing around among Republicans out that have pretty close ties to the White House on what's being talked about. I mean, this is going to be a pretty interesting choice because, on one hand, there's going to be a lot of pressure on someone to pick someone who's quote-unquote independent. Well, right. That was James Comey, kind of, right? Annoying both Republicans and Democrats. But
it was also his predecessor, Bob Mueller, who
yes.
did fit that bill.
Yes.
Yeah, you'd be surprised.
Yeah, you'd be surprised, but those are the names, and we'll see where it goes. I guess we'll know pretty soon.
We will. Thanks, buddy, very, very much. Charlie Gasparino. In the meantime, you've heard all of the comparisons that this was Nixonian and all of that, but the Nixon Library quickly shot out a little barb at the Trump White House by saying the comparison is wanting here because the fact of the matter is Richard Nixon never fired an FBI director. The more recent president who did that was Bill Clinton back in 1993. Now, there was a Saturday Night Massacre you hear a good deal about. Here to go back in time with us and help us out and look at those comparisons the media has drawn, my friend Ben Stein. Ben, the Nixon Library pounced at the chance to say, no, this is very different. What did you think of that?
Well, it is not that wildly different in the sense that important people in law enforcement were fired. Mr. Nixon fired Elliot Richardson, the incredibly snobby, elitist Boston Brahmin attorney general. He fired Archie Cox, the incredibly elitist special prosecutor who had been selected by Democrats to wreck Nixon's life. And when Mr. Ruckelshaus, who was deputy AG, refused to do those things, he fired him too, and they were replaced by Bob Bork. Probably the smartest attorney general there's ever been in the history of the world. But Watergate was totally different. There was already a great deal of material that had been discovered. There was already a very long, 18-month-long, in-depth investigation. But in the event, they never found any gigantic crimes. And there's a gigantic, huge difference in the sense that there's no crime here. Mr. Trump has not credibly been accused of any crime. There's no evidence of any kind of collusion with Russia during the election. They're barking up a tree that doesn't exist. I mean, this is an investigation in search of a crime. This is a media hullabaloo in search of a real thing. It's just a Democratic screaming match over something which, as far as we are aware, doesn't exist. It's like they're crying out about a zombie apocalypse. There are no zombie apocalypses, and we have no evidence that Russia actually did anything to interfere with the election.
All right, so obviously, according to Ben Side, this is far, far worse than Watergate. Now, your sense is, I got you, didn't I? All right, your sense is that with Watergate, it was the cover-up, right, Ben? I mean, that was the issue there.
Yeah.
But there's nothing here to cover up yet that we know of. Now, as you know, there's been a push on Capitol Hill. We've got multiple investigations going on. They want a special prosecutor right now. I assume in that event, people are going to exchange notes. I'm told in Washington it doesn't work that way. Where do you think this is going as far as drama is concerned, whether you like it or not? I sometimes see these things taking a life of their own.
Well, the media will try to whip up drama. That's how the media makes money. That's how they pay their bills, is by whipping up drama. I don't think there is any real drama here. I don't think they're ever going to find any kind of really serious Russian interference with the election. I think it'll go away. I don't think it's going to interfere with the tax-cutting program. I mean, everybody wants a tax cut, except me. Everybody wants a tax cut. I don't think it's going to interfere with the Republicans' plans to try to get a new health care law passed. I see it as a tempest in a teapot, although I could be wrong, because the media is an arm of the Democrat Party, and the media is determined to make trouble for Mr. Trump at every opportunity. And I will say, Mr. Trump made it easy for them because he was very impolite and rude to Director Comey. He should not have notified him by having it go out over the television.
Well, he didn't intend it that way. He didn't know where Comey was.
But it was very careless. It was very careless of him.
Yeah, sometimes we've changed. We've changed like times of doing a show and just kidded you and not let you know. And then sometimes you show up to the studio, right? So it happens. It happens. Real quickly, there's talk that Chris Christie and Rudy Giuliani on that list. My view is, as great as these gentlemen are, they don't want politicians in this, in that they're too closely tied to campaigning on behalf of Donald Trump, that would not be greeted favorably. What do you think?
I can't even imagine any of those names that Gaspo said, except possibly Mr. Kelly, and I don't think he's a young man. And generally speaking, Irish are not interested in law enforcement jobs anyway. Just kidding, just kidding, just kidding. No, I don't know. What it's
so you
be,
diss the Italian guys, the Italian-American guys, just with one.
No, with the greatest possible respect. Right. I don't know what it's going to be.
Got a big burden of proof, so to speak, on him for why he did what seems to be such an appalling act that goes against the tradition of prosecutors at every level of government.
All right, different vibes from different Democrats on the parting of such sweet sorrow with James Comey out at the FBI, the Federalist, Molly Hemingway on all of this. They're in the position now, and I think maybe this is why the Trump folks underestimated their response, that is Democrats' response, that they thought that this would be greeted gleefully. But you know this town better than I and how it works. Surely they're not surprised that it doesn't go that way.
I think the only thing that's surprising is how quickly people change their minds on whether Comey should keep his job or not. There is a lot of hypocrisy on Comey in this town, with Republicans and Democrats switching sides about whether they like him or dislike him. But it was only yesterday morning that many Democrats were complaining that he was not to be trusted, and he lost the confidence of the people, only to be up in arms, not just up in arms, but really histrionic about their opposition to his firing. Firing Jim Comey is something that people on left and right have been calling for the better part of a year. And that is a consistent thing he's had to deal with because he has done such a bad job in his role as FBI director, and he has put the entire credibility of the FBI in jeopardy. And so it makes sense that they were calling for him to be fired. It's just the really confusing thing is that they seem to be trying to make the argument that yes, he was bad, and yes, he threw the election with the help of the Russians, but he shouldn't have been fired in this way.
All right, yeah, that's what a lot of them are saying. And I was talking to Senator Mark Warner and others who have been advocating, maybe now what we need to do is get a special prosecutor going. And, of course, that's something that at this point many Republicans and certainly the administration has sort of backed away from. But where do you see this going?
Well, I do think that will be the Democratic talking point, that there is a need for a special prosecutor.
Why
and
though, Molly? I don't understand that when you have investigations going on in the House and the Senate, aren't they tripping over themselves?
It's not because they want to get to the bottom of the Russia inquiry. I mean, if you think of how special prosecutions have gone in the past, where you investigate the Clinton land deal and then you end up getting someone on a blue dress with semen on it, or investigating the leak of Valerie Plame and ending up, getting someone totally unrelated to it on some unrelated charge. These are really good ways to give someone subpoena power to just kind of have fun in D.C. for years to come. I don't think that will work.
And that's always leaked out. No matter who takes over the FBI, leaks are going to come out. And I'm just wondering, does this produce more of that? And isn't that part of the agenda? If you're the opposition party right now and you don't like the agenda of the party in power, this is political pay dirt, isn't it?
Yes, and I just want to make the point, too. A special prosecutor prosecutes. It's not another investigation, or it shouldn't be another investigation. And we already have bipartisan commissions investigating in Congress on both Senate and House. Already the FBI is investigating, and they will continue to investigate any claims of collusion with Russia, or, you know, what I think people really need to understand is exactly what Russia did and how they were able to do it. And we need that information so we know how to go after Russia so that they don't do it again. That's actually a concern. The leaks and everything else that's happening with the Trump portion of the investigation is really just D.C. at its finest.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, these investigations, careful what you wish for, they go way out of control and way beyond what you initially intended.
Well, that is what people want, at least on the left. They hope they get something that can get a little out of control.
True. And thank you for reminding us about the blue dress. Much appreciated. Molly Hemingway, thank you very, very much. In the meantime, fair and balanced Democratic timing. The Russian foreign minister is down meeting with the president and the vice president and the secretary of state. Oh, yeah, Henry Kissinger, too. I mean, is this the late, great 70s all over again after this? Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer want to have hearings, closed-door hearings with Attorney General Jeff Sessions as to why and how that all transpired to Democratic Congressman, beautiful state of California, Eric Swalwell. Congressman, good to have you.
Thanks for having me back, Neil.
Are you for these hearings just to find out what happened and why it happened?
Yes, Neil. I'm offended by what happened for the same reason that most Americans are. You know, this is the United States of America. You don't get to fire the person who's investigating you. That violates the independence that law enforcement is supposed to have from our nation's leaders. So as a member of the Judiciary Committee, I hope that we can bring before us the Attorney General and understand first, Neil, why was he involved at all in this decision? He was supposed to be recused with anything doing with Russia. And also, who else was involved?
All right. Well, we do know that Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, was the one, I guess, or who actually wrote the letter recommending this action. They seem to cite just the flip-flopping and the mistakes and everything else that had to do with the Clinton emails. Now, even some Republicans, to your point, have raised eyebrows on that response. But what do you hope to prove here? That apparently the president made reference in his letter firing Comey to the 3 occasions in which he was, and I'm paraphrasing here, exonerated the president. Now, the question that I had there, and maybe you had the same one, how would he know that? Would Comey have relayed that to him, that these Russian ties are being investigated, but they don't go up to his level, to President Trump's level?
There's really no way to know, and Director Comey, whether he told him or not, will not reveal that. That's not something he would be able to tell the public at this point in time.
And what would make the president say that?
You know, what would make the president say that President Obama was wiretapping him, Neil? I can't get into the mind of the president, but what I would like to see, to your earlier question, is to make sure that the investigation that was on its way into criminal and counterintelligence matters as to whether anyone on the president's team was working with Russia during the interference campaign. I want to make sure that that is ongoing and that it's not disrupted by this firing.
Well, it would be safe to say that it goes on, right? I mean, now the question is, wouldn't it be very obvious and almost too obvious for the administration to do something that Nixonian, I guess, for want of a better term? I mean, that's the comparison people have made when Richard Nixon fired Archibald Cox, the Watergate prosecutor. We simply got another prosecutor down the road who finished the job. So is there a fear here that just stops, that requests that have gone out for more information just stop? Because that would be highly unlikely, wouldn't it?
I believe that the men and women who serve at the FBI and at the Department of Justice will follow the evidence. And I'm just afraid that the person at the top of the FBI, there may be a chilling effect knowing that the last person who was conducting this investigation and leading it just got fired.
But the last guy who was leading it, right? Congressman did a pretty shabby job, I think, by your estimation, other Democrats' estimation, when it came to handling Hillary Clinton. Maybe there's a better person to do that with President Trump.
You know, I never called for Director Comey to go back
I'm not saying that, but
the November election season.
But of the timing of his coming before the public, days before the election,
Yeah.
and then essentially exonerating her a little more than 48 hours before the election. You know what I mean?
And however people felt about that, and they could have been right that he handled that wrong, but once he told Congress back in March that the president's campaign was under criminal and counterintelligence investigations, unless Director Comey broke the law, I don't think he should have been, pulled off this investigation, and that's what's happened, and I think that's why people are so concerned.
Well, then you stand out, sir, and I commend you for that, but many in your party, including Chuck Schumer and others, Hillary Clinton just last week saying if not for him, I mean, she would be president now. Now, maybe that's the case. Maybe you agree or disagree. But there was this pile-on that this guy was just horrific. And now all of a sudden he's practically Jesus Christ. I mean, I don't understand that part, you know?
Well, what offends people, Neil, though, is that he was leading the investigation. So whether you thought he was right or wrong when it happened, the president came in on January 20th and did not fire him. He was only fired after he told Congress and the American people that he was investigating the president's campaign.
Wasn't a lot of it having to do with exaggerating the number of emails that had made their way, to Anthony Weiner's server, the whole drill, and that started raising into credibility issues and that he could be sloppy. And I'm just here, passing that along, but that if he's that sloppy or in that regard, that maybe they felt, look, you're just not up to snuff here. Even fellow FBI agents were preparing a report, were told, Congressman, to correct the record on that. That's a rarity.
Yeah, I just don't buy that, Neil. Okay. And to suggest that the reason was how he handled the Hillary Clinton investigation, which Donald Trump applauded and said he showed guts, it doesn't add up.
Do you think that what Donald Trump did was Nixonian?
Neil, I think what we need to do is conduct our investigation in the House, not to be influenced by politics, to let the FBI have all the resources they need to chase.
You got one in the Senate. You've got some of your leaders who are talking about getting a special prosecutor going, others a commission. It's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, I think the House and Senate should have done a joint investigation as happened after September 11th to avoid redundancies. But an independent commission, I think, would be the best way to depoliticize this, declassify, and debunk a lot of the myths that are out there.
All right. Congressman Swallow, very good seeing you again. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
All right. J. Edgar Comey.
Edgar Hoover, in the sense that he is above everything, that he's untouchable, too big to fire.
No wonder why that guy got a Pulitzer Prize. Michael Goodwin joining me now, New York Post editorial writer extraordinaire, really crackerjack writer, Fox News contributor. Well, here we are, and now I'm thinking the rage that we're getting in Washington over this, the timing of this, seems a little bit beyond the pale. But what do you think of it all? Yeah,
look, I think the blowback is fairly cheap and fairly predictable. That as others have noted as well, that not so long ago the Democrats were calling for Comey's scalp, and now when they get the scalp, oh no, put it back on. We don't want it. We want Trump's scalp, really.
They're making a big deal, Michael, of the timing of it. Why now? I mean, if this guy seemed to be a stumbling kind of buffoon on this stuff, then that's what both parties were saying. Why now?
Well, look, I don't think the timing is arbitrary at all. You had this report that come out. The Deputy Attorney General was just confirmed 2 weeks ago. Right. He does this report, and that report is the basis of the firing. That report, which covers a lot of ground with a lot of former attorneys general and their deputies about various things that Comey did wrong. And Neil, there's a passage in there that I think people ought to pay closer attention to, and it is essentially in the letter to Comey. Rod Rosenstein says something to the effect that I'm somewhat surprised that you disagree with all of these findings. In other words, that you think you did nothing wrong. Now, imagine yourself with an employee like that, who you've just said, you really screwed up, and the employee says, no, I didn't. Well, where do you go from there? I mean, what kind of relationship do you have then if that employee is free to do whatever they want?
And there were revelations since in the last few days that he exaggerated the number of emails that popped up on Anthony Weiner's server and all that. Those are new developments. But again, right. You know what people are saying, and again, we get into this here, that maybe the White House was getting scared that he was asking for a little too much or digging a little too close to the White House and those Russian ties? You know how this game
Yeah, well,
goes.
look, but I think the answer to that is, well, so James Comey can then investigate the president for the rest of his life and get job security that way. So at what point? At what point does the president have the prerogative? And we have seen no evidence. It's not as though Comey has been producing evidence that of any collusion with Russia. So when would have been a better time, according to the Democrats? Certainly when Trump first came in, you could argue he had the point then, but that would have been, what would that have been? Well, he's just punishing him for not indicting Clinton. Look at it this way, too. Is there any doubt that Hillary Clinton would have fired James Comey pretty soon after she took office? I mean, Trump is getting together his presidential team. It has taken a while. I don't think the timing here is suspicious at all, based on what we know.
It was her husband, Bill Clinton, who was the last guy to fire an FBI director back in 1993. But let me ask you, I mean, one of the things as Fox's chief nerd, as you know, Michael, I always worry about, does this delay an agenda that could really help this economy, whether you're on the left or the right, Republican or Democrat? So I think the tax cut thing gets pushed back. I think the health care thing gets pushed back. I think regulatory relief gets pushed back. And I don't know, markets that have been largely sanguine through this whole thing, I don't know how long they stay that way.
Right.
And that might be part. I'm not trying to sound like a black helicopter guy here, but that might be part of the agenda as well. Well,
look, I do think that there is a risk that the president will lose key members of Congress over these kinds of things. And so I think that in some ways, if you're in Congress and you're up for re-election in 2018, every day you're reading the tea leaves. Every day you're checking polls in your district. And I think one of the things that I think was a mistake yesterday was that the White House did not seem to anticipate the blowback.
I think you're right about that.
And Rosenstein's letter, I think, is a very compelling document. Rosenstein himself is compelling. Recently confirmed by over 90 votes in the Senate, career prosecutor appointed by Obama as U.S. attorney. So why isn't he out there as the face of this? His letter, I think, is so compelling, and he has a compelling resume. Why isn't he making the case personally? Why isn't he in front of the cameras? And then the second thing I think that was a mistake yesterday was that Comey was not in Washington. The president apparently sent the letter directly to Comey at the FBI building. Why does the president not know Comey is not in Washington? Why does the president not know where Comey is on this big day? So I think there's still some staff issues that are not working smoothly, they are not anticipating the reaction, so their reaction to the reaction is slow. But on the substance, I think it was the absolute right call. I think the president had ample reason to do it, and I think the timing, any timing would have been bad for the Democrats who are just looking for Trump's scalp.
All right, by the way, my wacky prediction, Mr. Pulitzer Prize, is that Rosenstein is going to be the FBI pick to head the FBI. What do you think of that?
Well, that would mean then another confirmation battle over somebody else. So, look, I think they have to start adding people now.
All right, I didn't think through the whole details here, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, got it.
All right,
got
Michael Goodwin, thank you very, very much.
My pleasure.
Michael, terror probes. People want to kill us, blah, blah, blah. What happens now? The FBI has terror investigations going on all 50 states. The guy says, don't lose sight of that. Our lives are on the line here. FBI, the former assistant director, Ron Husko. Ron, yeah, I do worry about that. What do you think happens? Does the FBI, like any other organization, become distracted?
There is certainly a distraction today, Neil. The FBI is, I think, recoiling and recovering and processing the loss of this director who, a great many employees still have great respect for and appreciation for and confidence in. But, the organization is much bigger than a single person and bigger than the director, and they know what their job is. I can assure you that bright and early this morning, the lights were on. They were in meetings. I suspect there was a all SAC conference call to discuss with the bosses out there across the country what's going on here in D.C., what the expectations are. And one of those expectations is full speed ahead on every investigation you have.
When Bill Clinton got rid of FBI Director William Sessions in 1993, he didn't like the guy, and there were a lot of financial things that they were looking at, presumably the reason why Sessions was dumped. No relation to Jeff Sessions, by the way. Then Louis Freeh comes in, a guy who they thought they would have a better relationship with. It ended up being 10 times worse, at least for President Clinton. And Freeh was relentless. Do you think that some of the political names that have popped up or were actively campaigning for Donald Trump, like a Chris Christie or Rudy Giuliani, taking nothing away from you know, their legal gravitas, and they're really very good prosecutors, but that hurts them. That the FBI and the people you know want to see someone who's not that overtly tied to the campaign of Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think personally, and I think my views would reflect some of my former colleagues, that those folks ought to be disconsidered, discontinued, disregarded immediately, not because of what they've done in the past, other than their political bent and alliance with the president. And the same would be true if they're allied with former, Secretary Clinton or others. In a perfect world, this is somebody who can garner strong consensus on Capitol Hill for confirmation, that does enjoy great trust, that gets a thorough examination of things they've done in the past, things they've written, comments they've made, that show them as apolitical, but understand the needs of the Department of Justice and the FBI to move forward towards the truth.
Ron, thank you very much. Ron Husko, the former FBI Assistant Director. We shall see who that person is. All right, in the meantime, the Russian foreign minister in town today, meeting with the President of the United States today. Wow. Minister in town to meet with the President when all this was going down. Rich Edson on all of that. Hey, Rich.